Shall I have?
Sit first.
Okay.
Ya. Ini karena Norbert pakai bahasa Inggris, nanti mungkin saya akan terjemahkan tapi summarize saja ya. Karena kalau terjemahkan satu-satu nanti akan lama sekali, jadi 2 jam mungkin. Jadi I will introduce you here to the podium to presentate your what is it like? Like is it like 10 pages of
The presentation?
Yes.
More.
More.
More. Okay.
Yeah. Norbert makes specific, like spatial presentation for Indonesian audience, and he also made spatial introduction in this book for Indonesian audience too. So yeah, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shall I? Sorry. Hello. Hi. Nice to meet you. Thank you, of course, to Komunitas Bambu for making this translation, and to Amira, of course, and thank you as well. I mean, Uzwa, thank you for finding me. I will talk slowly. Can we have the presentation? Yeah?
Boleh presentasinya?
Yeah. Maybe you can put the next slide. This is where I live. In Leiden, in the Netherlands, Belanda. This is my house. Very old house, very small house. It's quite tiny, but it's very old, as you can see. It's almost when Rumphius went to Ambon, 1650. This house was also built. So, very old house. Can I have the next slide?
Yeah.
So, I first discovered the name Rumphius when I was working with my friend Alexander Reewijk on this book, Voyage of Discovery, a book for the Asian Library in Leiden. Can I have the, Can I have the next slide? So this is in Leiden, the Asian Library, part of the University Library. So Perustiga Universitas Leiden, and they have a special section, Asian Library, and they made a book specially for this, for the Asian collection. And in this Asian collection, we have many special books from all over Asia, Japan, China, but especially, of course, also Indonesia. And here I discovered the handwritten manuscript of the Herbarium Ambonese, the Ambonese herbal. Can I have the next slide? So this is part 1. As you can see, it's a very big book. It's a very old book. Handwritten, hand-colored, hand-painted. Later on it was published like this. But it took very long, like half a century it took to get this published. But this is the original. This is just one part. There are 7 parts, so it's a lot. And this is my book. Can I have the next one? So just to give you a bit of an impression, it consists of 7 parts in 12 books, including an auctua here, which is some extra plants that he discovered later. The first books are on palm trees, fruit trees, spice trees. The 6th and 7th book are on shrubs. So, you know shrubs? Then we go to herbs, smaller plants, and then we go to something very strange, coral. Now, this is quite strange for a book on plants, because why would you include coral? Coral is not a plant. But Rumphius thought that coral trees were also part of the plant kingdom. So, and as you can see, it's coral trees, yeah. Can you? Maybe next slide, yeah. Thank you. The first plant in the book is the coconut palm. As you can see, they even painted a person from Ambon climbing the tree, with a parang, a knife, to cut loose the coconut. And you see the coconut fruit, and you see something very strange, which is the coconut pearl. So in Ambon, some people had coconut pearls, and Rumphius discussed this as well. He chose this plant to start his book because it was the first plant you see when you sail to Ambon. So when you enter the harbor, the first plant you see is the coconut palm. That's why he starts the book. And he calls it the captain of the herbal, the captain of the book. Maybe next slide here. So we have then he starts with many of the palm trees. The first one is even named after him, Caryotta rufiana, the fishtail palm, lontar palm, the areng palm.
Pohon aren.
Then he describes the many fruit trees that he encounters. Ook mango, papaya, ananas, or pineapple, sorry. Maybe next slide. Yeah. Describes many of the herbs. These are very important. The different ginger species that people also use medicinally. Okay. And some very strange plants. Do you know this plant? Yeah. It's very small, very small. And if you touch the leaves,
Tapi ini bukan putri malu ya? Bukan putri malu. Yeah.
And what's very special is that in Leiden we also have a few of the specimen of plants that Rumphius collected. So this is a specimen of the plant. As you can see, it has his signature, Herba sentient, so the sentient plant, the touch-me-not plant. Maybe go to the next one. So this is what he also writes about. Coral trees. These are some more specimen. Of course, very special that we still have these. I discovered them in Leiden in a very old book that has many plant specimen, and I discovered that a couple of these specimens were collected by Rumphius himself. So this is like 4 centuries old, very, very old. So we still have these, right? Very special. Okay, maybe next slide. So who is Rumphius? We have the most famous picture of Rumphius is the one where he's sitting behind the desk. He's already old, gray, and he's already blind. This is when he's younger, and he is not blind yet. And here we see him making notes in the wild. But he's wearing fancy shoes and a fancy suit. Not very good for collecting plants. But 17th century, this is how people collect plants. You know, he let other people do the work. You see in front, you see his servant. He is doing all the work. He is collecting plants. Rumphius is giving notes. So Rumphius was born in 1627 in Germany. He studied in the city of Hanau. He studied at the gymnasium. You know gymnasium? Like a high school, but like a high-grade high school. So you learn Latin, Greek, but he also learned a lot of mathematics, which was very helpful to him. But he wants to sail the world. He wants to become a scientist. And he says he will leave his parents' house because of his love for science. But a lot of tragedies happen to him. So when he leaves his house, he's recruited under false pretenses. So he's recruited to fight, or he thinks he's going to Venice, and then later on to other places. But he's recruited secretly to join the army to fight against the Portuguese in Brazil. So he goes on a ship together with other soldiers, and they sail to Brazil to fight. But their ship gets taken by the Portuguese, and he gets taken as a prisoner of war. And he served as a prisoner of war in the army of the Portuguese for a couple of years until he was released. He goes back to his parents and then goes again to the Netherlands, and he signs up for the Dutch East India Company. Can you go to it again? This is a better trip for him. This time he arrives safely in Batavia, in Jakarta. He rests for a couple of months, and then he's recruited again into the army. So he is recruited as a soldier to fight in the Great Ambonese or Hohamohal War. This war is meant to secure a monopoly on the spice trade in cloves, right? We have here a beautiful painting of the clove tree with the clove flower. Of course, a similar war was fought for nutmeg in the Banda Islands. Rumphius was part of the war to get monopoly on cloves in Ambon and the Moluccas. And of course, this is what it's all about for the Dutch. Clove tree, clove, chenke, and pala.
Pala.
This is what they really like.
It's called pala, not palang. Pala.
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 Pala. Sorry, I mispronounced. But this would be the first time that Dutch people see a very accurate representation of the trees. So this is where he goes. This is an old Dutch East India Company map. We see here, of course, Ambon. We see Seram. We see Hohamohal and Buru. He goes to Ambon. I think the island looks a little bit like a claw of a crab. If you go to the next slide, you can see why. See, it's a little bit like a claw. This is where he goes to as a soldier. He goes to Castle Victoria in Ambon City. And these are, of course, also the ships that the Dutch would sail on. Maybe go to them. This is a very old map of Ambon City, where you can see the Fort Victoria, and you can see what it looks like, right? The island, what it looked like. Maybe go to the next. So first he is in the army, fighting as a soldier. Then he, in the army, gets a special position for construction of fortresses. He's very good at mathematics, so because he's so good at mathematics, he can help build these fortresses. But he dislikes the army. He wants to leave the army. He does not like fighting. So he wants to become a merchant. He will become a merchant in the chenke trade, in the clove trade. But also, he says his job feels like a mask to earn his money. His real love, his real passion is science. So he starts to, at night, study the plants, animals, geography, geology of the Moluccas. But something, again, tragedy hits him. So this is from the introduction to the Ambonese Herbal. He writes that he has walked in the sun for a long time, and he suffers from sufficio or cataracta nigra, so like cataracts, and he starts to become blind in a couple of months. Now this is, his son painted him sitting behind his desk, but then he is already blind. So he's called the blind seer of Ambon. We go to the next, and then skip, oh, sorry. Another tragedy. He's already blind, and it is Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year 1674. He is at home, not part of the celebration, but his wife and his two daughters are out in town, in Chinatown, to celebrate New Year. And they have fireworks, they have show right, to celebrate. But then around midnight, tragedy strikes. A huge earthquake with big tsunamis that follow. Around about, people don't really know. Rumphius will research this and write about this. He says about 3,000 people lose their lives, but probably a lot more undocumented people. But also he loses his wife and his 2 daughters. And it writes in the log of Fort Victoria, it says how sad he was. That he rushes with a servant, he rushes to town to look for them, and he finds their bodies already diseased, they already died, and he's very sad about this. So he loses his wife. Can we have the next slide? To honor her, he chooses an orchid that she has found in Lake Timor, in Ambon, and he names it after her, Bonga Susanne. Somebody has, yeah, you have it on your dress. If you could stand up and show. She made a painting of the flower, and also right there at the end, it's also there.
Di ujung sana.
We go to the next. Oh yeah, go to the next again. Sorry. Oh, wait, back a little bit. Back a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. One more. Yeah. Okay, back to Anthony's herbal. Of course, he needs to write about many of the plants, but he chooses also to write a lot about the plants that are very important to the people in Malacca. This is maybe the most important plant, the sago palm, right? Instead of eating rice, people there eat sago bread, sago meal, which they get from the palm. And he also paints the, the beetle, the sago beetle that destroys the palm. And sometimes the sago, if it is not harvested, if it is not cut down in time, it will start to flower. And it makes this huge inflorescence, right? Which is called the crown of the sago palm. And here you can see it, very beautiful, like huge inflorescence. After that, the palm dies. Go ahead. Another very important palm is the pinan, part of, together with the siri pinan, very important to Malaccan culture. He writes, if you go to Ambon, you will have to try. You have to try the siri pinan. And he writes about the durian, the king of the fruits, he says. And he writes that it is very, he does not like it. He does not like it. Some people like it, some people don't. He does not like it. What is very special about Rumphius is that he does not only discuss the plants that are in the gardens and in the fields that people grow, but he also goes into the wilderness. He goes into the forest and starts collecting plants there. Go to the next one. So he encounters many strange things, like strange to his eyes, because he comes from Germany, right? And in the Netherlands. And there we have ferns, but not fern trees. And I mean, he finds many fern species. Yeah. He also finds mushrooms. Again, very strange to include this in a herbal. We know mushroom is not a plant, but again, Rumphius thinks mushrooms are also plants. And this is a very special mushroom, this one, because it glows in the dark. So people use it to find their way through the forest in time of war. They use this as a little light to follow each other through the jungle. And of course, he also writes about ubigaja, but he does not know what it is. He is very confused. He thinks it's a mushroom, the flower. Of course, we now know it is a flower, it's not a mushroom. But it looks a little bit like a mushroom, so he's confused. And he really is sort of afraid of it. He's afraid of it because it stinks very bad. And he thinks this bad smell causes disease. So that's why he is afraid of it. He also writes, this is a very weird plant as well. He finds these ant plants, plants that are high up, epiphytes high up in the trees, that have like a ant nest inside them. And he thinks they don't have a mother or father. They don't come from seed. They come from like a metamorphosis of an ant nest. It's a very strange idea. Of course, now we know it comes from a seed, but he did not know. Yeah. Also describes many different orchids. Again, this would be the first time that European people see epiphytic orchids. We have orchids in the Netherlands as well, but only from the ground, right? They're only like on the ground, not high up in the trees. He's very confused about these plants. This one is named after him, Peluncuran buku. He was the first one to describe this. But also Anggrek tertulis, the written orchid. He thinks, so these flowers have like spots on them, right? Have colorations on them. He thinks these are letters. And he thinks these are Hebrew letters.
Hello.
Very strange.
Hello.
And he thinks that maybe God is trying to say something through these letters to people.
Yeah.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah.
This is one of the national flowers of Indonesia. Very famous, right? The first one to discover it. And this is the first, so this is the first drawing we have of the miraculous plant is Nepenthes, the pitcher plant. This is the first picture we have of Nepenthes. It's from Madagascar. You can see it, very small. Written by Etienne de Flacourt, French governor of Madagascar. Of course, in Ambon, Indonesia, you have a lot of pitcher plants. He writes about this, and he is the first one to say, so Mr. Flacourt says, these are flowers, these pitchers. But Rumphius says, no, they are not flowers. The plant has different flowers, and he paints them at the top. These are flowers. The pitcher is something else, but he does not know what it is. Go. So he thinks that sometimes it pleases nature to copy humans and to copy items from the household. So he thinks this is a copy of something from humans. That nature is very playful in that sense. Go ahead. Oh yeah, all right. Here you also see this playfulness of nature. So he thinks that nature sometimes paints on rocks. To paint different scenes or paints different trees and plants. Of course, now we know these are minerals, crystals. These are not paintings of nature. But he thinks differently. So he calls them gambar batu, batu pohon, so tree stone, like trees in stones, and figures in stones. Go ahead. The idea, well, he thinks that plants receive influence from the planets, almost like astrology. So he thinks that plants with thorns and spikes, these are influenced by the planet Mars. Beautiful flowers are influenced by Venus. And very strange plants that if you touch them, they fold up, or if they have weird forms, he thinks they belong to Mercury. Because Mercury is the god of shape-shifting. So here we see more Nepenthes. Now, Rumphius did not know what the meaning of these pictures was. If we go to the next slide, we can see who found out. So Charles Darwin was the first one to suggest that these might be carnivorous plants, insect-eating plants. If you go to the next slide. This is a friend of Darwin who experimented with Nepenthes to see if it is a carnivorous plant. And he finds out, he discovers these are carnivorous plants. The pictures lure in insects by providing sugar, nectar. They fall into the pitcher and get digested and then eaten by the plant. Very strange, right? Go ahead. Another very strange tree. As you can see, this is from the original manuscript. Very beautiful handwriting. One of the most scary plants in the Ambonese herbal is upas tree. Right? The poisonous tree of Makassar. If you go to the next slide. So, when he is a soldier in the army, he is also fighting against Makassar, because Makassar is very important for the clove trade. And Makassar soldiers carry sompitan, like a...
Sumpitan.
Yeah. For blow darts with poison. And this poison is from the upas tree. And the Dutch are very scared of this weapon. Very scared. You think, like, in the jungle, it is silent. It is stealth, right? It doesn't make a sound. Europeans had guns. You know, you fire a gun, boom, right? It's a lot of sound. You immediately are discovered. But if you have a blow dart, very silent and deadly. So the Dutch were very afraid of this. And they write down all weird stories about this plant. So go to the next slide. But he finds a cure. Very strange, because this plant is all over Jakarta, right? This is Asian lily. You see it everywhere. To him, he calls this Indian moly, which is moly is a reference to the Odyssey by Homer. Odysseus going to the witch Kirke, who has transformed all his men into animals, and he takes this herb and it protects him. So he uses this idea to say this is the medicine against the upas tree. If you go to the next. And he writes that the upas tree grows in a valley that is a desert. Nothing can grow there. It's a valley of death. The only thing that is alive is the tree and a basilisk, a mythical creature. Of course, this is not true. But he did not know, right? People were very afraid, so you get stories, you get strange stories about this plant. Go to the next. But it's a very common tree in Indonesia, very common. The Rumphius did not know this. It was a secret, right? I think that this is the last one. This is a very old depiction of a coco de mer, a sea coconut. You can see it a little bit, but not very clearly, because in silver there is a bird attached to it. If you go to the next slide, we see it. This is how Rumphius displays it in the Ambonese herbal. And as you can see, it is cut open. And it has gold, lids on it. Like a lid on a box. People did not know where this plant comes from. Sometimes these coconuts would appear on the beach. People would collect them, and they were very valuable. But nobody knew where it came from. They thought it comes from a palm that grows in the ocean. So if you go to the next one. Here you can see it with also lids on it. So this is from the Queen of South Sulawesi. And you can see it right here. And you can also see it here. This is her daughter. You can also see it there. Very special item, thought to hold mysterious medicinal powers. Go ahead. Rumphius talks to a Javanese fisherman. And this fisherman tells him that these coconuts come from the tree of the Garuda. So there's a tree out in the ocean, and these fruits grow, and this is the nest tree of the Garuda. Which is, of course, we know now, this is not true. But this is the story that he writes down. If we go to the next slide. So this is in the Seychelles Islands. This is where the plant comes from. But people did not discover the Seychelles Islands yet. This was not discovered until 18th century. So they thought it comes from a sea tree, but actually it comes from these islands. And sometimes the coconuts get carried out into sea, and then they disperse and they end up on beaches in Indonesia, India, but they actually come from the Seychelles. I think we move to this is the last slide. This is Rumphius' pet. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope this was good to follow. Yeah? I hope so. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Norbert. I don't think I have to translate all of them because maybe you all already understand, right? Yeah. So
Good.
maybe I'll just go right to the testimony. Mbak Titik ini adalah salah satu pencinta Rumphius yang tahun lalu dia menginisiasi justru. Waktu pertama kali kita terbitkan buku Kotak Keajaiban, Mbak Titik itu kontak kita. Wah, saya senang sekali gitu. Saya langsung inden ya. Pesan dulu bukunya pre-order sebelum bukunya terbit. Lalu dia mengajak kita untuk kolaborasi mengadakan Pekan Rumphius yang pertama tahun lalu. Iya, jadi dan Mbak Titik pernah menulis juga kan, menulis novel tentang Rumphius waktu itu. Iya. Jadi kita pengen dengar nih bagaimana sih tanggapan Mbak Titik soal penerbitan Rumphius kita yang kedua. Boleh di depan? Ya.
Halo Buana. Aduh, makasih Mbak. For Norbert, I know you love Rumphius. I know from your presentation, and this is very beautiful.
Thank you.
Ya, tentang Rumphius benar dikatakan Mbak Amira. Jadi setahun yang lalu karena saya suka Rumphius itu pertama kali karena sering jalan tulisan, kemudian kok ada banyak nama Rumpii gitu. Saya penasaran siapa dia gitu. Pas melihat istilahnya perjalanannya bagaimana Herbarium Ambon di Indonesia itu dihajar oleh keadaan berbagai keadaan, tapi akhirnya tak terbit gitu, bahkan ketika matanya buta gitu. Nah, ada beberapa pertanyaan yang mungkin nanti saya sampaikan ke Pak Norbert. Kenapa Rumphius bukan why Rumphius not be a father of taxonomy, but Linnaeus? This is very curious.
Yeah.
And terus kemudian hal yang menjadi notis di saya adalah Rumphius itu menyatukan sastra dengan sains. Karena deskripsi Rumphius itu indah, siapapun bisa membaca dengan santai gitu. Sementara kalau ilmuwan sekarang, misalnya para taksonom itu benar-benar saintifik gitu dan hanya dikonsumsi oleh dirinya sendiri gitu. Nah, saya berharap mungkin the next ada apa yang bisa mendeskripsikan sebagaimana Rumphius bisa mendeskripsikan sehingga ilmu itu terbuka untuk lebih banyak dibaca, karena seperti Norbert tadi menjelaskan, itu kan kita jadi, oh ternyata tumbuhan itu bisa dinarasikan dengan indah dan kita jadi sadar, oh iya ternyata indah gitu. Itu sih. Nah, ini ada teman-teman ISBA ya Bu, itu yang bisa membawa ini ke ranah yang fun. Itu sebenarnya kan gambar-gambar ini untuk jurnal kan biasanya. Nah, itu kita bisa nikmati di sini gitu. Lebihnya sih senang sekali. I very grateful that you book in Indonesia. So I waiting a long time that this is translated in English in Indonesia. Jadi selamat menikmati. Kalau besok ada yang mau join untuk jalan-jalan di kebun raya. Oh ya, satu lagi, saya mau notice bahwa kebun raya Bogor itu pernah dijulukin the Mecca of Botany. Botaninya mekahnya para botanis gitu. Tapi sekarang rasa itu kayaknya sudah meluntur gitu loh. Kita melihat pohon-pohon ya hanya sekumpulan pohon, tidak ada narasi apa-apa gitu. Itu sih yang mungkin para manusia klorofil ini mencoba untuk menyuarakan kembali cerita pohon. Terima kasih.
Oke, ya sedikit dari peserta, mungkin 2 penanya. Saya belum buka ya. Oke, siapa yang mau bertanya? Siap-siap. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Mr. Norbert. This is a very beautiful book, by the way.
Thank you.
What interests me the most is about the coral observations, coral observation inclusion in his book.
Yeah.
Since underwater observation isn't very popular until 19th century. Can you tell me more about, or tell us more about how the method is using in coral observation and underwater observation?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're correct in saying that people did not, well, I should say that underwater life has interested people for a long time. Already the Greek philosopher Aristotle, on the island of Lesbos, he starts to go with divers and look for fishes, different corals, etc. But people did not know where to place corals. Some people thought they were stones and they were minerals. Some people thought they were plants. And then 18th century, it is first discovered that they're actually built by very small animals. So now it belongs to the animal kingdom, the corals, but it used to belong to the plant kingdom. And Rumphius is so interested in sea life, so the rarity cabinet, for the most part, is about sea life in the intertidal zone, so near the coast. And he uses fishermen so they will catch things in their nets, and he will look at them and describe them. So he collects a lot of plants, and he also asks the fishermen, how common is this fish? How common is this crab? So he tries to get a lot of information from the people that are actually fishing a lot. And there's so many amazing shells and crabs that he describes, right? There's the nautilus shell, for instance. There's a paper nautilus. This is how he gathers information from the sea life. But it takes a long time for it to make sense to people, like what we're actually looking at. Like some creatures he finds scary. Like you'll have starfish with all tentacles, and he finds that to be a scary thing because he doesn't know what it is. Is it a plant? Is it an animal? He does not know. So yeah. I hope this sort of answers your question.
Okay. Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Norbert, for your presentation, and thank you for all the people who already gave comment and questions. And terima kasih karena semuanya sudah tertarik dengan bukunya. Saya harap kalian semua enjoy baca.
Okay, so I think that would work. Okay, I'll put it here.
Yeah. Wow, very cool. Perfect, Mbak. Alright, sekarang Pak Rizal. Kamera. Oh.
Kembali ya.
Oke, tepuk tangan boleh. Oke, so editor boleh. Oke. Oh. Dari sini. Dari sini.
Go ahead.
Gini. Oke.
Nice.
Tangan ini kita anggap ini buku officially launch ya.
Thank you.
Ya, selamat menikmati bukunya. Silakan bincang-bincang sama Norbert kalau masih mau dengan Botanika jika ingin berbincang lebih lanjut. Sekarang waktu bebas. Terima kasih.